Japan was once also an agricultural nation. Up until the 1940s, approximately 70% of the population lived in rural areas. People's lives there were controlled by male-dominated traditional value systems. There is an old saying that women have nowhere that they can call home. This saying is an expression of the precept that regardless of where they may be, women have no place where they can feel at ease or gain a sense of contentment. A woman is first controlled by her father until she is married, and then, after marriage, by her husband. If her husband dies, she is then under the control of her eldest son. Thus, the moral of this saying is that throughout her entire life, she will always have to submit to a man. There was a time when women were not considered to be full-fledged members of the human race, and expressions that treated them contemptuously, such as "women and villains are hard to deal with," or references to dull-witted women, were used openly without being questioned, and the women too tolerated this or accepted it as probably being the truth. Industrialization gradually progressed beginning in the 1950s, and then during the 1960s, Japan entered a period of intense economic growth, and a demand arose for women in the labor force. Women were first thought of as cheap labor in roles that assisted men. Still, it became possible for women to earn an income through their own efforts, and they were also able to realize a certain degree of economic freedom. Together with this, there was also an increase in the number of women who went on to study at high schools and universities, as well as technical schools, and today there is hardly any difference at all between the percentage of men and women students. This has given rise to new value systems, while the government has also established systems and laws to make gender equality a reality. First, there was the anti-prostitution law, which guaranteed the rights of women. Then there was the eugenic protection law for the protection of the mother. Following that, the maternity leave law, and sexual equality in employment opportunities law for women, as well as others which have been enacted in order to guarantee and facilitate the advancement of women into corporations. It can be said, however, that in spite of this advance in the pursuit of higher education and the establishment of a legal structure to guarantee equality between the sexes, we women, still shackled by male-dominated culture, conventions, and values, have not yet made a sufficient effort to gain freedom for ourselves. Even though we may have gained knowledge and technical skills, as well as the equality that these laws and systems guarantee, we still have a long way to go in involving ourselves in activities that would allow us to make the best use of them. As long as we do not make the effort to liberate ourselves deep down within our own consciousness, we are not truly on an equal footing with men, nor will we find a sense of independence. The same can be said of the nations of northeastern Asia, where economic development has been progressing at a rapid pace. In Korea, for example, there have been many advances made in the pursuit of higher education, and the percentage of women now attending university has exceeded that of men. The Confucian value system, which was the source of moral support for the male-dominated society there, however, has penetrated deeply into every stratum of society, and women have been denied freedom in their activities and true independence by this value system. Most women feel that getting married while still young, being subservient to their husbands, giving birth to splendid children, obeying what their mothers-in-law tell them to do, and tolerating everything is an admirable way to conduct their lives. The fact is that even if they do receive higher education, There are extremely few workplaces where they would be able to take advantage of it. One of the modernization policies in China, the one-child policy movement, is still in place as a policy that seeks to restrain population growth under the strong leadership of the government. However, that one single cherished child who brings such happiness to the parents is, as you may expect, a male. This little boy will then be treated as if he were a little emperor, coddled and pampered. Even in China, the old value system known as Chong Nang Qing Nu, which stresses the importance of men and discounts the value of women, still remains intact, deeply rooted among the women themselves. There has been a rapid advancement in industrialization in the nations of Southeast Asia due to foreign investment. In Malaysia, for example, large-scale industrial complexes started being set up in the 1970s in an effort to promote the production of electrical parts, equipment, and other goods. 70% of the employees working there, however, are young women who have come there as cheap labor from agricultural villages. Just as they have been submissive to their fathers or husbands back in their home village, in the factories where they work, too, they continue to conscientiously obey their foremen and group leaders, to act in conformance with the rules, and to apply themselves diligently and meekly to their work, faithfully maintaining the tradition of sacrificing themselves for their parents or family. The corporations apparently also consider these traditions to be proper and give the foremen and group leaders patriarchal authority and undertake management policies that require long work hours, low pay, and prohibit the formation of labor unions. Given the impression that that is what having a job is all about, and with their sense of worthlessness reinforced, the women develop a strong longing for marriage, feeling that a woman's happiness, after all, is in finding a good partner as quickly as possible. How unfortunate it is that these women are given virtually no chance at all to make the best of the capabilities and possibilities that they have. It is a great loss, both for the women themselves and for those nations that are continuing their economic expansion, for women to be held forever captive by old values, never to extricate themselves from them. Traditional and religious values are exerting an even more serious influence on the women of Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, India, and the other nations of South Asia. In agricultural areas in particular, women are thought of as nothing more than tools for doing work or for giving birth to children. Most women apparently are forced to enter into marriage at the young age of 11 or 12 and give birth to one child after the next with their immature bodies, only to have their lives claimed by malnutrition or overexertion. In India, precepts of caste and traditional religion have penetrated into every facet of daily life, and women are also constrained by these laws. In regard to marriage, for example, the laws of Manu specify that when a woman marries, the marriage is not consummated unless she brings garments, precious metals, and other goods. Women basically have no value. Instead, they are nothing but a burden. This means, consequently, that a father must send a dowry when his daughter goes to the man who is to become her husband. This has led to any number of instances of women unable to marry because of a lack of a dowry, or being tormented by the families they have married into, perhaps committing suicide, or even being killed because the dowry was too meager. Even in India, there are laws that prohibit discrimination due to sex, race, or caste, in addition to an equal pay law that guarantees equality, a law prohibiting dowries, a law regulating the marriage of children, and a law involving pregnancy as well as others. The reality, however, is that these laws are not being observed. Most nations in South Asia protect the rights of women. They have created various laws and systems to make freedom and equality a reality and are lending a helping hand to women. It could perhaps be said, though, that there are also problems with the women themselves that have prevented these laws from being observed and have perpetuated their existence in name only. In order to do away with these problems, we will probably first have to answer the question of what we should do and how we should go about finding solutions. In the words of the Chinese language translator, Ms. Wang Shu Miao, China is a country with vast territories and a long history, and there are considerable regional differences in both language and culture. And though each region has its own unique traditional culture, one element they all have in common is Confucian culture. It may seem that Confucian ways of thought are not evident in the 1949 Communist Revolution in China and have virtually disappeared from the modernization policies currently being forwarded. Even so, people in agricultural areas still cling to the old traditional values. This is reflected, for example, in the idea widely held that women have no need for advanced learning or education. Even in the cities, men keep their distance from women who have advanced education, and wives are compelled to serve their husbands. Household chores are still considered to be women's work. I believe that this way of thinking still reflects the way that women feel about themselves. The majority of women, however, are highly motivated, whether at school or at work, and are strongly driven to gain a sense of self-reliance. All of the laws and systems, furthermore, guarantee their equality, and there is no sex discrimination in wages, positions, or executive promotions. Considering Asia as a whole, I think that the women of China were early in being emancipated from the old traditional value systems and are in an environment that allows them to demonstrate their own capabilities. This is how Ms. Wang described her sentiments. Now then, what types of work are Asian women involved in? Where do they work? And what sort of perceptions do they have of their work? Let's also give some consideration to what should be done to achieve freedom and emancipation. In Japan, beginning in the mid-1980s, the shift was progressing toward high-tech informational and service industries. Women also moved into retail and wholesale, finance and insurance, and service industries. The percentage of women employees has become approximately the same as that of men. Yet, disparities still exist in specialized technical fields, for women account for no more than 7.1% of corporate management, 7.1% of financial and tax accountants, and 3.5% of judges, judicial officers, and attorneys, while 94.7% of kindergarten teachers, 99.2% of daycare nurses, and 96.7% of hospital nurses are women. The difference in pay is also still the same as it previously was. The average wages that women receive in all industries are less than 60% of those of men. That does not mean that there are disparities between the capabilities of men and women. Besides that, in Japan, the legal and structural environment has been thoroughly established. Even so, the fact that this disparity still exists could be seen as due, after all, to the massive barricade of old values that stands in the way as a challenge for women. The shift from primary to secondary industries and then to tertiary industries has begun even in Northeast and Southeast Asia. The outcome is that those who are flowing from the rural areas into the cities are providing a source of cheap labor for manufacturing and other industries. Young women from rural farming regions are working in large numbers in many factories in Malaysia, Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, and other countries. Every day they have to put up with long working hours, strict rules, and wretched housing, as well as intervention in their private lives. In the Philippines, even if they do graduate from the university, there is no place for women to work, and there are large numbers of women who are willing to pay high agency fees to seek employment overseas. They then take the money they have earned, that is, foreign currency, and send it to their parents or family back home. It could probably be said that women who are working in situations such as this are helping to support the national economy of developing nations and are the key to furthering economic development. Ms. Sulistiasi, a reporter for Kompas, Indonesia's largest newspaper, says, "The status of women is also still quite low in Indonesia, and current conditions do not yet allow women to work equally with men. Career women who do the same work as men are not looked upon favorably either by men or by society as a whole. Career women are frequently portrayed critically in TV and movie dramas as women who neglect their homes and sacrifice their families. It would be rather difficult to work the same as men in a social climate such as this. Still, life is difficult in families that are below middle class, and many of the women are out working. Essentially, all of the work that they do, though, are jobs that assist men. The money that they make is not their own, but is used for their children, parents, or other family needs, and they also feel that it is natural and virtuous that they do so. In Indonesia, the traditional male-centered values persistently remain in every aspect of daily life, and in general, the pattern is that the men work outside the home and the women look after the family. In most countries of South Asia, primary industries, especially agriculture, form the mainstream. More than half of the populations of those nations live in rural villages. The women there work harder than the men do. After their farming chores are finished, they have to continue working, such as washing clothes, drawing water, gathering firewood, and taking care of the children without any time for rest at all. Those employed at the rubber, palm oil, coconut, and other plantations in Malaysia get up for work as early as 4 in the morning. The wages paid to women and children are less than half of those that the men receive. Even if the whole family goes out to work, most are still unable to rise above the poverty level. Moreover, the goods produced there account for as much as 40% of their foreign exchange earnings. In other words, those women down at the bottom of the social scale are the driving force behind the key industries of the nation. In the rural areas of southern Asia in particular, children are looked upon as laborers and as assets, and they have as many as possible. However, that brings about instead a decrease in employment opportunities and also acts to drive wages down even further. That then gives rise to a repetition of the vicious cycle of the flow of surplus population into the cities and the emergence of slums. Even living in the cities, there is no place for women to work if they have neither education nor technical skills, which then creates a pattern of women leaving in large numbers to look for work in the Arab nations, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, or other foreign countries. Another pattern is that of women who, victimized by poverty, are sold into prostitution and treated as tools in profit-making transactions. Even so, they continue to live on, halfway resigned to their fate, left with no alternative but to sacrifice themselves as they work diligently. Still, that does not necessarily mean that the women of Asia live in total despair and that there is no way that they can be helped. In the Philippines, Gabriela, organized by a coalition of women's groups, is active in the forefront of the movement for democratization and the liberation of women. Denouncing the tyranny and corruption of former President Marcos, many members were imprisoned for political offenses and were raped in prison, yet still continued to resist and fight, until finally they saw their country led by a woman, President Aquino. Gabriela has thus shown that it has the clout to influence politics. In the farming villages of Bangladesh, women's committees, known locally as Shomiti, have raised funds by having each member contribute a handful of rice, and they are using those funds to make handicrafts of jute. They are pioneering their way to independence by taking the fiber from coconut husks and braiding it into rope, raising goats, and other activities. The women who up till now have always been treated as inferiors are gradually restoring their pride as human beings. In Thailand, the members of the women's organization known as Empower are involved in activities with the aim of liberating themselves from poverty. One example of their continuing efforts is the study of English. If they can learn the English language, they will be able to find stable employment and become independent. Even in India, the anti-dowry movement is ablaze. The struggle and opposition, which the women have undertaken at the risk of their own lives, is spreading from New Delhi out into regions throughout the country. According to Ms. Bhagirathi Mani, a native of Bombay, India, who is currently attending graduate school in the U.S., it is normal in families in South Asia, especially in India, for the husband to be about 10 years older than the wife. So I think that the husband tends to treat his wife as a child who doesn't know anything. Then as time passes, the wife too comes to think of herself, in fact, as ignorant and incapable of doing anything at all. Still, among the younger generation, there has been an increase in women who attend high school and university, and it is becoming possible for them to make use of their own abilities in their work. They work mainly in banks and so forth, and if the family has a business in their home, there are many women who work there. There has been an increase in working women not only in the cities, but also in the rural villages. The dowry is a custom in India that has come down through the ages, and the problem is that it treats women as objects instead of as human beings. A more serious problem is that even women themselves think that they would feel more reassured to let the families or parents make the decisions about their marriage. The women of India actually are extremely charming and are also very capable. There are also volunteer movements being initiated to encourage them to develop their capabilities on their own. There are, for example, activities such as knitting or making folk crafts in which they can involve themselves in order to earn money without being restrained. Such movements are being promoted both in the cities and in the rural areas and are very promising. The governments of all of the nations of Asia are coming to grips with economic development, providing full education, promoting employment, abolishing sexual discrimination and various other problems, striving for the creation of societies that are more prosperous and free. A provision was adopted at the International Conference on Population and Development held in Cairo, Egypt, in September 1994 to guarantee reproductive health and rights, that is, the rights of all couples and individuals to make their own personal decisions regarding childbirth without outside interference. Thus, the call demanding the realization of women's rights is now increasingly intensifying throughout the world. However, regardless of the superb systems and laws that may be implemented, as long as we women do not confront these problems ourselves, there will be no freedom or liberation for us. There will be no freedom for us unless we gain a better understanding on our own, become more resourceful, help one another, and then carry out reforms to enhance our awareness without being hampered by existing value systems. Still, it cannot be said that all of the values that have been with us all along are necessarily bad, or that they present problems. We must examine our own hearts once again and discover for ourselves those values that have no basis in reality and that are unreasonable, and then go about making changes. If we do not do that, we will not be able to escape from poverty. Each one of us will have to restore our own pride as humans and live our lives with confidence in ourselves. If we, the women of Asia, do not face each coming day with a positive attitude and live creatively, sexual equality and freedom, in the really true sense of the word, will never come within our grasp.